So I'm going to kick it off today, as you can tell from the slide, and we were talking about data-driven personalization. Jeremy here, if you haven't heard of him, is SVP of Sales Strategy and Operations at a little company called Sales Loft. So if there's one company in a great position to get lots of data on personalization, it would be Sales Loft. And I am co-CEO of PredictableRevenue.com. So we were talking before, and I think we've done at least an interview, maybe some other things before, but this is a chance to kind of look at some of the latest data on outbound metrics, what works, what doesn't. And so I'm really excited to go through this, Jeremy, and even see what you got to share with us here today.
Yeah, brilliant. I'm lucky to be on, and as you and I have chatted before, I always love geeking out with you on how to engage prospects effectively, since you literally wrote the book on it. So it's a super honor. So we'll dive in, and I would love, as we go through this, maybe just for you and I to talk about what works, what doesn't work, argue a little bit, I'm sure, at times. And as people who are listening have questions, just put them up there in the chat box. We're monitoring the chat box, and we'll try to react in real time. So don't hold back. We'll talk briefly about cadences. I think if you're on an Aaron Ross webinar, you probably know what a cadence is. So we're not going to belabor the point there, but then get into personalization and some different cadence best practices. So let's do it. The what and the why, and I threw a bunch of things here. Maybe this is the first part of us to talk about. I mean, the traditional cadence, right, was heavily phone and email. Social prospecting got added in there, and these days there's more and more direct mail and SMS. I'm wondering, Aaron, for you, with the companies you work with your clients, is there anything else in the mix? Is it right that you're seeing direct mail and SMS and texting increase?
Case by case. So really the big three are the phone, email, and LinkedIn, and even social. We actually have some clients who are testing things like Instagram. Again, that's case by case, because lots of companies who especially target B2B buyers, those buyers aren't on Instagram. So yeah, I think the trend is always going to be every channel is going to work, but kind of declining in time, and there'll just be more channels. So more complexity in how many places you can touch people, in which kinds of buyers engage in which channels.
Yeah, it drives me nuts when I see something like phone is dead, or then someone next week says email is dead. I'm sure one day someone will say social is dead, but the truth, right, is that all these things, I mean, they're all there. They all come away.
Those are dramatic statements. In fact, I'm even guilty of that, because in predictable revenue, I said cold calling is dead. It's not dead. So I was just being a little dramatic. But yes, things are declining. There'll be always new channels that work for a while, but then when they work, everyone piles in and they stop working. So LinkedIn has been on a huge rise the last couple of years.
Yeah, for sure.
And we'll see.
One of the things I know has been super effective, and it's I guess it's implied in the social thing here, is that LinkedIn has that video voicemail, or just audio voicemail that you can send as a LinkedIn message. I think anything novel, right? Any new channel that has novelty that your prospects are on is going to work for a period of time. So I think that's still working nicely, and very few people, from what I can tell, are actually utilizing that. So it's a good tip to at least ride that wave while that one lasts.
Yeah, and every channel will have its own, like direct mail. If you're targeted and smart with it, and SMS, but.
Yeah, I got a mug in the mail yesterday from someone, but you can tell already that I don't know who the someone was.
Free swag,
but Pete Kazanji over at Atrium and Modern Sales Pros sent me an awesome mug that said "Coffee is for closers" with the Atrium logo on the other side, and that one I do remember. So it all depends on what you send.
Do you remember what Atrium does, though?
Yeah, actually, we're customers of Atrium. So
so cheating. Okay, what we got here?
So I just wanted to put up a sample cadence for folks to think about outbound. This is a pretty typical cadence. If you look at some of the best practices that are out there that come from some of the analyst firms like Topo, Bridge Group, it'll look something like this, right? 15 touches over 16 days. There is actually some data science that is implicit in what's here. I'll just hit on a couple things. So one is this idea of...
Quick question. Before you do, what's data integrity? That's in day one. So.
Oh, data integrity. So when we recommend or design cadences, we always have people do like a research step, is another way to put that.
Gotcha. Like a double check.
It's like double check. This is a real person. They're still at the company. Check out their LinkedIn. see what they're, that sort of thing.
Great. And I hadn't seen that, so perfect. I think one of the challenges, mistakes that today's prospectors make is, and even teams, are relying too much on when you build a list, when you buy a list, or someone gives you a list in some way, or you get it from a database, that's the list, and there's no, like, they don't question them enough.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Sorry.
I mean, you obviously you pioneered a lot of the work on specialization of the sales function. One of the things that I'm hearing as a new potential, just on that note, right, on that specialization arena is, there's obviously outsourcing companies who will take on your whole sales development function, but I've been hearing a little bit more about people outsourcing just a piece of it, and the piece might be to either identify or scrub already identified accounts, to find the contacts associated with those, and then maybe even to go so far as to craft the first email that might be sent out and load that on behalf of an SDR or an AE, but then stop there. So they don't actually execute the cadences, but they do a lot of that heavy lift at the front end.
Yep.
We had a question on the James Duffy's been adding some great commentary in the chat there. He was asking who are the companies that are doing that. So without disclosing names of customers of ours, we have some customers actually who are doing that. We are experimenting with that at SalesLoft ourselves for our own prospecting purposes to just make our SDRs and AEs more efficient.
Yeah,
and then
I think there's probably honestly hundreds of companies that do some version of that.
Very, very common. And then on the other side, right, the providers, I think almost anyone who is in the SDR outsourcing business would take on that sort of work. They'd be glad to do it. I think it's actually more efficient because, the rest of the cadence can be it's different complexity, I guess. It's all about specialization of labor.
Yeah. So
on the data science side for this thing, a couple things. So one, as I mentioned, you want to create a degree of randomness, and the way the pseudo randomness is working here is, think of, for mathematical people, it's almost a Fibonacci sequence, but it's basically you add +1 from day 1 to day 2, you add +2 from day 2 to day 4, +3 to day 7, +4 to day 11, +5 to day 16. We have a few other things thrown in there, but it's basically a +1, +2, +3, +4 to as you go, to add a little bit of distance, some breathing room. And that breathing room helps conversion rates as you get to those later touches. Of course, most of the response is going to happen probably in your early on if you get it. But
if they're a good fit,
then you're going to get. The other thing that's in here is this concept of double touch, right? And I think that's a pretty common best practice, is either call an email, 2 calls, what have you, is on
the same day.
Or same time. The same day. Yeah, same day or back to back. That's pretty common. Dave Feldman asked, what are new developments in old school cold calling? What do you think, Aaron?
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything like really new, honestly. There's flavors. Because basically calling still works if you're targeted, like if you're intelligent. I think what doesn't work with the classic channels, including email now, is brute force. I'm just going to call lots of people. I'm just going to email lots of people. So even with calling, I think there's lots of ways you can use the phone. You could do research calls, you can do cold calls, there's voicemail techniques. So yeah, there's companies like Chorus and Gong who are trying to add more kind of like analytics to actually track and transcribe basically in real time what people are saying and kind of give people more metrics. I haven't used them personally, so I really can't vouch for how useful they are or not. That's an interesting. I don't think we're that far away from having programs to like listen to calls and be able to provide real-time feedback. So that's one, but I think a lot of it's just with cold calling, it's just learning how to be better at it, more targeted. When do you make a call and to who, what do you say, and more just being kind of better, because everyone makes calls and just like throwing calls out there doesn't work.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I think there's like strategically better and tactically better. On the tactical side, we go through waves of things like, should you say, is this a good time or is this a bad time? Or should you not say either of those things? Right?
Is that still a debate?
I think it comes in waves. And I think it's just like email. It's like whatever is novel and unexpected and new and not salesy.
You got to zig when other people are zagging, basically.
That's it. Yeah, I think that's the right way to put it. And then I think the sort of more strategic thing is deciding, what is the purpose of that call? I mean, A and B, I think, is to what extent have you done your research and prepared before you make the call, right? So like if someone were to call you and cite, I mean, I watched, before this, I'm a big fan of yours and Colin Cadences, so I watched your webinar, I think with a super provocative title. I think it was
the SDR model is broken. Yeah,
our SDR model is broken. So I watched that. If somebody were to call you and like reference that right off the bat, you're going to warm up a little bit because they took the time, So I think that degree of personalization is a more strategic decision because it slows down your prospecting, but that slowing down may be worth it. Before I move off of this, one other thing was someone asked, what's the difference between a social follow and a social connect? So the follow, right? If you're on LinkedIn, you can follow somebody without connecting them, and they'll know you're a follower, and they don't have to take any action. The connect requires effort on them; they have to accept that connection, and like depending on who you are, they may or may not accept the connection. If anyone's my philosophy, I'm curious about your philosophy on this, Aaron. Like my philosophy is, everyone, even today's SDRs are tomorrow's CROs. So I'm very happy to connect with anyone who tries to connect with me on LinkedIn, as long as they appear to be a real human being.
Yeah, me too, basically. Although I've maxed out my LinkedIn, there's like a 30,000 person cap. So I have someone on my team sometimes go out and kind of clean out like old students or engineering people from Brazil, kind of. Maybe people aren't as relevant. So but yeah, anyone who reaches out and says, "Hey, I read your book, I saw this," or even looks like a real person, I usually accept. Like, why not? I don't.
Yes, and for you, they can follow you, right? You have no limit to how many people can follow you.
No, and LinkedIn 30,000.
Yeah.
Oh, follow. Yeah, no. Anyone can follow. It's true.
Which is great. So here's my quiz here's a quiz of the day. I'd love people to actually type in what they think in the chat box, but it's. Imagine that you took anybody, SDR, AE, what have you, and they do a whole bunch of activities, every kind of activity, right? All that stuff we talked about before, phone, email, social touches, what have you. Even the research steps, you can throw those in. So take all the activities they do in a period of time, like a month, and then divide that by all the ops they sourced. So that way you get a number for not how many activities per person. We already looked at a version of that you would try. Not everyone's going to respond. So how many total activities to get one op?
Okay, I put a guess in there. I actually don't know the answer. I'll be curious, but I put a guess.
We'll give it a
Greg's right there with me.
There's that whole thing about anchoring, right? It's like you throw a number out there and then everyone else gravitates.
Right. If I said 50, people are going to feel crazy if they put in like 500.
Yeah. I remember one of my I took a class on behavioral economics, and I think there was some question about like when was the Magna Carta signed, and you were primed with some number before they asked you that question. So
like 1500 until like 1498. Yeah, no, it was like 1020, right?
I don't know. Well, James might have answered that 1099. I don't know if that's his guess for the number of activities, or that's.
Oh, look at that, 1215.
Right.
Yeah,
sweet.
re-anchoring. Oh, so that's the year of 10.
Okay. Yeah. No. 1215.
Right. What's the answer?
Yeah. So you must. I don't know. You didn't even read ahead, but you're right.
No, so honestly, I really had no idea.
I remember hearing some stat somewhere that like the best. I'll relate this in a second. You'll see where I'm going. But the best programmers in the world are like 10x more valuable and more productive in terms of quality code output than the worst ones. In the SDR and sales engagement world, I think it's a tighter spread.
Yeah,
I've seen some sniper, I'll call them snipers, who are able to get an op per 100. That's like. I'm not a big sports fan, but I hear Zion Williamson is like all the rage. So, or LeBron, maybe that's probably less debate on that one.
It can vary a lot based on your market and product. It could be a lot more than this for companies in a tough niche.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
It could be, by the way, I wouldn't be surprised. Some companies might have like 1,000 per opportunity if you're in like certain kind of services, like tougher niches. Yeah. So if this is kind of like B2B product,
B2B, B2B product for sure. And this also assumes that you're doing a decent amount of, personalization there as well, right? If you and calling, because calling actually does reduce the number, whether people answer directly or it primes them to respond via email.
So before we get away from the cadence, sorry, before I forget, can you go back a couple slides? Because I haven't gotten this question for a while, but a lot of times people would say, what's the best cadence? And I'll be a little bit snarky this way, but they're like, do we email, call, email? Or do we email, call, email, call? I'm like, okay, you gotta let go of perfectionism. It's really more about the number of touches over the time. And it's really impossible to try to have this like perfect call on day one, email day two, especially because when you take a sequence and you're adapting it to your own situation, you got to find your own version of it. It's kind of like a diet book, right? There's whatever the zone diet or the keto diet. It's great, that works for them. It's not going to work. It's not copy paste to you. So you kind of take the principles, but you got to kind of find your own version and don't over obsess about it. So have a bunch of follow up, but whether it's an email or email call social, it's not going to be a big deal.
Yeah, I totally agree. The other thing I would add is this is like the best intention, right? Is whatever cadence you load,
right? And
then you start it, and then shit happens, and
it's like a life plan. Here's how my life is going to go, or a business plan. Here's how it's going to go.
So in some ways, these things are like the minimum delay between the touches, right? Because sometimes life gets in the way, but you ultimately finish it, and it might actually not be on this calendar. So yeah, I'm with you. I don't think there is a perfect thing. Yeah. One thing I would say though is on the calls, I try to recommend, you can see it here, no more than 3 voicemails, because more than that just feels aggressive.
If they listen to them.
Yeah, that's true. Also, I don't even really have a phone, so I have a Google Voice thing that I never ever listen to.
There you go. Okay. So what's next?
Yeah, you put 2,000 activities a month. That's about right, by the way.
I was just kind of I actually feel. Do you know? So, quick question: what internally, or from clients, you kind of have a guess as to the average number of sales opportunities they're supposed to generate a month for outbound SDRs, not inbound?
Yeah, it's 10. And I think I think that like you said earlier, every business is different. What I try to design and recommend is, just like in sales, quota and compensation, you want basically 2/3 or 70-ish%, whichever way you want to round, to be able to meet or exceed quota in a given month.
Yep.
So if at your company, 2/3 are meeting and exceeding at 10, great. If they're not, lower it, because otherwise you're going to have really bad morale and people quitting and being underpaid. So you got to tune that. Yep. I was talking to someone earlier today, actually, and they had recently lowered theirs to 6 for exactly that reason. So yep. That's the way that you back into that answer based on your business.
Yeah. So I know that even like way back at Salesforce, like 8 for enterprise was a good, because people could beat that. But it was 10 for kind of mid-market. So even within the same business, going towards bigger companies was a little fewer, small number, just kind of adjusting it based on how challenging or not. And I know I haven't seen any in a while, but I feel like for a while there's always stories around our SDRs are getting like 40 meetings a month, or these kind of crazy numbers I don't buy into in terms of quality. So
I have a really hard time. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, like the quality factor is so easily underrepresented in this kind of high activity type of role. And I think it's really one of the dangers the executives fall into, which is the more is better trap.
Yeah, and especially like, CFOs want to back into some sort of CAC efficiency number and set quotas that way. And if you do that, then you're going to end up with some miserable SDRs and miserable AEs.
One final note, because Brian had a question, does kind of like activities and quotas depend on average deal size? And so I think, again, if you were, just as a really broad spectrum, if you were looking at like super enterprise, like really, let's say, custom niche specialty market, you might even have one, extreme is maybe even like one really qualified opportunity a quarter at an extreme end.
Yeah.
Or maybe 2 to 4 a month. It could be, and then maybe like 20 a month. Could be a little bit more depending on like the transactional side. If it was like super consumer-y, it could even be a lot higher than that. So there's this wide range. Most kind of B2B SaaS product type stuff is that I'd say like 6 to 10 a month. And quality, in terms of like qualified opportunities where a salesperson has taken it and accepted it.
Yeah, it's important, by the way. Everyone has different language for this, but it's exactly for when you gave that number, I gave that number. It was all about SDR or whomever, right? Set a meeting. Then that meeting was either held or not. That rate is about 85% held rate, although you can get it up from there with certain best practices. And then the next thing is that the AE accepted it as qualified, lightly qualified, right, by some definition. So that's, whether you call it a SAL or a SQO or a whatever you want to call it, that's what we're talking about. Accepted ops after the first meeting was held.
Yep.
Cool. All right, let's dive into personalization. This is one we love to talk about simply because it's based on a lot of data, and if the way to read this is the y-axis there is the reply rate, and the x-axis is the proportion of personalization. So I got to explain this, and James, I will get to your question on meetings held and show up rates in a minute, but let me finish explaining this one.
Good question.
So the way to think about this is when people use SalesLoft, they often will preload a template, and then we check to see what percentage of that template actually gets added to or overwritten. So it may not be the first 20%. It could be let's say you were to personalize 20%. It may not be the first 20%. It could be anywhere. Usually it is the first 20%, and that's generally where I would recommend putting the personalization. So the idea here is on the zero on the left-hand side here, that's the reply rate if you just take on average for hundreds of millions of emails, if you just take the template and send it as is. And then you can see that the reply rate steadily increases as you get up to that magic 20% personalization number, so overriding or adding 20% to the starting template. Then it basically flatlines. So all that extra effort you're spending beyond the 20% personalization is kind of wasted time and effort. And then this interesting thing happens when you get past 80%, and a little counterintuitive is like, why does that roll off? And the roll off is because, your peers, your manager, your marketing department, your sales enablement department, whomever, right, have been A/B testing these templates and tuning them over time. And if you just come along and completely blow it away because you think it's not good, then you're likely to kind of do harm. So that's what's going on there. So
you overdo it.
You overdo it. And I was another customer recently, and it was funny. They had done a personalization experiment. It exactly 2x'd their reply rate. We see the same thing internally. So, coming back to James's question on the best practices for the getting meeting held rates up, I'll start with you, Aaron. What do you recommend to increase meeting held rates?
So first, one thing you said is interesting is they did a personalization experiment, doubled reply rates. So I would always kind of like with this chart caution people, which is at what cost. For example, if it takes them 3 times as long to do it, and you get twice the response rate, theoretically you're actually losing kind of response throughput. Like how many hours of work per response. It's always a little complicated because if you only have like 10 big markets, small targets, but I think what you really want to look for is kind of not just arbitrary response rates or open rates, but kind of look at the whole funnel as a whole, how much time people are spending, what works, and kind of like that big picture.
Opt through, just like we talked about earlier, opt throughput, right?
Yeah, optimize for throughput. I feel like people obsess over the open rates, which, all right, well, they're not bad.
I hate open rates.
Yeah.
Useless.
Okay, so let's go back to, I like that question James asked. Going back, so if you have meetings being set and you want to convert more of them to meetings that actually are held, right? So people, like there's always going to be people who cancel at the last second and so on. What are some of those practices? So I always like to make sure that when you've got SDRs, they're trained really well so that when they're setting the meeting in the first place, they're ensuring there's a good fit. They're kind of giving some reason for the person to attend. Like they're going to see a demo or they're going to have a discussion around something valuable to them to make sure that they're setting the right expectations for the meeting. So that's one of the places that I like to focus on. And the where that doesn't happen, for example, or when SDRs are paid incorrectly when part of their comp is on meeting set, or activities, and they get a bunch of meetings, but they're not qualified meetings. So people aren't really bought in. They just agree to show up. That's like one of the dangers. That's one.
Yeah.
Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, I got a couple. One is whenever you set a meeting, ask for a cell phone number and ask for permission to, hey, I'm not going to use this to prospect you. I'm just going to use it to give you a reminder, but just before the call. So I think that's like number one. My number one tip is get their cell phone number when you book the meeting, so you can get them. Like I had a meeting yesterday, and I was 7 minutes into it. No show, and was set up by one of the AEs that I work with, and he just texted the guy, and the guy had just switched from Outlook to Google Suite and hadn't sort of figured out the notification thing and set those up. So, it's on. Oftentimes it's like an honest miss that you get ghosted. So if you got the cell phone number, that's one. And then the other one is like relying on all the stuff that you read about, social psychology principles. So one thing I always coach folks to say is like, is there any, just thinking right now, is there any reason you think you might not show up next week? And then just pause and wait. I mean, it's a bold question to ask, but if they say, no, I can't really think there's anything that would get in the way, then they have like internally committed to actually showing up.
Yeah. I like it. Actually, hadn't thought about that one. I like it.
Yeah, I think and there's other
the cell phone one's a good one too. By the way, you mentioned SMS. Quick thing I do, and I know some people on our team do this, which is, again, we don't do cold texting. I tried it, but kind of once you're engaged with someone, at least offering, hey, you can get a cell phone number or move to text? Because I know, like, for me, sometimes it's easier to connect texting to kind of solidify a meeting versus email. So doesn't hurt to ask, because some people will prefer that, or WhatsApp.
Yes, fair, yeah. Oh, I guess, by the way, there's also a couple of other like side things. We could probably do a whole webinar on like minimizing no-show rates, but obviously you want to book the meeting as soon as possible after, right? I mean, you don't want to wait because time kills the deals, kind of classically. And then, there are theories about when to schedule the meeting, whether it should be like morning or afternoon. I think morning calls, if I recall right, tend to have a higher show up rate because just people's day gets in the way. They get tired, stuff happens. If you Google, I'll probably put it in the notes here. I can't copy and paste right now, but if you Google 18 ways to reduce, sorry for the clicking, B2B sales call no-show rates, my name in there. I have a LinkedIn post that has that title, and you'll see the other 18 ways we could talk about.
Nice.
Cool.
Let's keep moving.
All right, cool. Yeah. All right. So then what I did was I wanted to put an example of like, what does a very typical prospecting email look like? So Aaron, have a look at this one. What do you think? Like, break it down for me. Subject line, greeting, hook. What do you think?
Something like time to chat. Let's see. So time to chat, I don't know, seems like a good enough subject line. I would open that. I mean, I don't get over too much email. I get enough.
Yeah.
Which access to your lead strategy, sales loft, help teams keep you data-driven decision. Had good names. The data-driven decisions, that's really vague. Maybe not into that, but okay, can I explain it? Their description, the value prop is confusing. It's something's an on-demand knowledge tool that answers any complex question and delivers hyper-tailored insights to develop new ideas, strategize for projects that support new.
It's a lot, yeah.
Yeah, that's too. Yeah, it's too vague, too broad, too confusing. Like, And then, so I don't know. The rest seems fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay.
Yeah,
like,
it's not bad.
Subject's okay. Greeting's okay. First paragraph, if it's generic, right?
Yeah.
It's okay. Value prop, I agree, is a little bit cluttered. Craig on the chat said, "What do they do?" Yeah, it's really, really, really tough to know.
Yeah.
I think marketing often. I was talking to a marketing person yesterday, actually, about this. Head of marketing, or Sexton. No, she's she was VP of EMEA for Trip Actions, and we were talking about the fact that like marketing people will sometimes go to too much of a level of abstraction. I love that value prop to basically be a to what so that why by means of how. I need a little bit of what, I need a little bit of why, and I need a bit of how. And I think a lot of value prop statements are missing just like that little smidge of how that tells you what's going on.
It just has to be something where I can kind of get a sense of what it is without having to interpret it too much.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about
I just say, the studies show that what people put the equivalent of like a third grade IQ on figuring it out. So if it's too hard to understand, they just move on.
Yeah. By the way, I don't think I have it in here, but we looked at the grade level of, I think we looked at 10 million emails, and it turns out that reply rate is impacted by the grade level of the writing. And I think elementary school grade level is your target. So fourth, fifth, sixth grade
academic,
Okay. Just on personalization, like how could you make this better? Really love the stuff that Beck Holland has been talking about over at Chorus. I think you mentioned them earlier. And then before her, people are probably not as familiar with Jeff Hoffman, who 20 years ago was doing Basho strategies that talked about a lot of the same stuff. But Beck goes and you should, if you haven't had her as a guest, you totally should. Her stuff is so good. But she talks about these like 6 levels of personalization. And I'm not going to go through all 6, but the prospect created content's a good one, is where the person you're prospecting actually has some stuff in social media. If they don't, like, you just sort of step to 2, step to 3, step to 4, and so on. But here's an example of like how I would prospect Beck if I was using her own, her approach, right? So my subject line here, FTS is, I don't even know if she uses FTS, but her content is flip the script. So I just abbreviated it as FTS, which I thought might be kind of clever. I use Hey Beck. I actually like using Hey quite a bit. And then I've been devouring your videos and loved your anecdote about, and then a quote, right? So something right out of her own content. And then this hyper specificity, right, in minute 23 of session 3. And what this is doing, right, is obviously it's sort of ego stroke there, but showing that I invested time. So I'm triggering reciprocity. And then the other piece is, and I think this is so important, is like your prospects know how to recognize dynamic tags. And that last email I showed that someone sent me, like it just had sort of dropped in sales loft as a dynamic tag. But there's, it'd be very, very, very hard for a machine to be able to do this. So you're proving that you are a human sending an email to another human. I think that's key. And then part of what her recommendation is then take that and then segue it into your value prop. I had someone prospect me recently. I don't think I put it in here, but they like, I live in Jersey and they put Go Devils or something. I'm not a sports fan. And then they weren't like prospecting me from the New Jersey Devils. They just said Go Devils, and it just was hanging out there. You got to connect whatever personalization you're doing to your value prop. So like in here, she said she loved Pandora over Spotify. So I have this cheeky segue, just like streaming music services, you have many choices, blah, blah, blah. Right. So it's kind of I like this example. I guess it's because it has that segue in there and it's super personalized.
Yep.
Cool.
Right. I don't know if you care, or your video went off a little bit ago. So if I was going to just nitpick one thing that you called out, I think if you have too much detail, like in minute 23 of session 3, that goes over the edge. It feels like it's like a device to me, because, like a regular person probably would know it's a minute, like you have to go back and like it just seems, it's just,
it's overdoing it.
Overdoing it. Yeah. That you said the overdoing it, that overdid it. Yeah. But like session 3, but you're right. So first of all, concrete details stand out. In the Impossible book, we listed, it's like, again, if you're not putting your full attention on things like concrete details, contrast, movement or motion, there's like 6 of them total, but the details do make a difference. Even like saying here, 2,220 companies have chosen sales loft versus like 2,000 or more than 2,000.
Right. Like it's more believable numbers that are
more specific.
I will
one other tip too, that I think people use a lot of percentages, like, hey, we can help companies grow 30%. Again, you're introducing this element of, okay, people have to kind of step back and calculate, like think about this. So it's better to use actual numbers. Like, someone grew from $1,000 to $1,200 versus they grew for 20%. You're trying to make it, the email as obvious as possible, so I don't have to interpret it all. I can just kind of get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one's much better than the last one.
It's all this. It's a lot of people know the Challenger sale book. They don't know the second book, the Challenger Customer, which I actually think is a better book. And that one is all about effortlessness, right? Like you make it effortless for your prospects and your customers. Craig asked, would I personalize all emails this way or just those for ICPs and DMs? I mean, I think it does get very much to Aaron's comment earlier, which is you're trying to maximize, at the end of the day, you're trying to maximize revenue. And the next step from that is to maximize, if it's SDRs, right, qualified op generation. And, so you're going to personalize the percent that makes sense for you. Yep. What we do, I mean, I'll just tell you, like, there's what you conceptually should do. But we actually do for our own prospecting activity is that we personalize email 1. And we ask our SDRs to personalize 100% of email. Like, they should email, be careful with the percentages here. We want them to personalize every email 1, but we only want them to personalize 20% of each email. So it's trying to follow our own things. But in that case, like where we are outbound, it is in our ICP and it is to decision makers. So like your mileage is going to vary, but I think, follow Aaron's advice that tune it so that you're maximizing your throughput.
So we could spend a lot more time on this. I know we're already 40 minutes in. And also there's a recording. So sorry, John and Jordan, leave questions to the end depending on time. And then
cool. Yeah. Jeremy. I just figure give people as much value as possible, but I can give them some of these best practices.
Just come back. Take the questions, and at the end we have question time. We'll see what we can get to.
I'll do
this one's great, by the way.
I'll do lightning round here. So
there
we
can
get through these. All right, lightning round. So tip 1 is like this whole thing about time of day and day of week is just a complete distraction. Just prospect. Don't use excuses.
Just do it.
Yep. Cool. That's tip 1. Tip 2 is like the inbound thing everyone knows, respond fast. We actually benchmarked 100 companies, the SaaS Cloud 100 companies. And even now people know what they should be doing and they're not necessarily doing it. Only about 60% got back within an hour, only 40% within 5 minutes. So just sort of no brainer is when your prospect reaches out to you, get to them fast. Tip 3, short subject lines.
I will say in B2B kind of consultative sales, it's not as important, the speed, and as if you're in like a more commoditized market like mortgages, cars, insurance, where they feel like they all look the same. Because if you're looking for a sales engagement platform, you're going to do your diligence. You're really, no matter you still got to get back to people, but it doesn't have to be 5 minutes. So that's kind of where some of InsideSales.com's data just gets misused for their own smart marketing purposes.
for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Shorter is better. It's true of subject lines. We'll look at email bodies as well. Interestingly, one
zero.
Interestingly, 0 is like that. That's the sneaky, snarky, blank subject line. It works a little, but it's just, come on, just don't be ethical. The one-word subject line, people ask me, what's the one magic one word? And most of the time, it's actually, when we looked at the data, it's actually your company name. So,
predictable revenues. We're toast then. We can't even.
Yeah, you got to get rid of the space or something.
I guess predictablerevenue.com.
Yeah, or just predictable. You can have the space. It's okay. I think you're still okay. But that's generally that's the best practice there. There's this whole thing, about like, should you put, if I was prospecting you, would I put your company name in, my company name in, your first name? Like, should you do those things? And I should have explained the way these work here is this is reply rate multiplier. So if your average reply rate was whatever, 5%, the 1.68 is a 1.68x. When I was younger, I could do more math faster in my head, but
it's pretty significant.
So like sender company name, that's your own company name. That's what I was talking about. Definitely do that. whether you put their company name in there or not, it's kind of a throwaway. And then if you put their first name in, that's actually harming you right now. Referrals, this one's super obvious. You talk about cold emailing, cold calling. If you'd
be surprised, man. So many people just do not even get this principle still. Right over there. These people don't do it.
I'm not surprised. I mean, one best practice, even if you don't get like the traditional referral that you think of, like every SDR should be connected to every executive in their company. And I don't think there's a company on the planet where the executive would not be more than happy to do an intro for you.
About connected on LinkedIn?
Yeah. That's enough. Like, you got 30,000 connections. Like anybody asks you, I'm sure in your company, would you, and I'm sure you don't have 30,000 like close friends that you remember.
Do I have one close friend? I'm married. Yeah, I have lots of people like friends and acquaintances, but yeah.
And I forget, you got a lot of kids, so that's keeping you busy.
True.
How many are you up to?
9. We've at some point 10, but yeah, 9 so far. Only 5 here in Edinburgh. The 4 oldest ones stayed in the States for boarding school and college. So
I have just 2, so you got me beat like many multiples.
It's like it's not a competition. So okay, funny side story. I used to have a business partner. I would say, it's like when you are in sales and you like in a pie, like there's some contests where if you win a piting contest, if your prize is more pie, it doesn't really help. It's like not a contest you necessarily want to win.
I got it. I could read through that one. Yep. Cool. All right. Short emails, just like short subject lines.
Bam.
Keep it under 100 words for sure. Maybe even under 50. Like I think 50 is probably the magic number. So keep it short.
I've heard send 300 to 500 or under 500 characters.
Yeah, it's probably the same deal. Yeah. It's basically, does it fit on a mobile screen? Yes or no?
Yep.
I mean, that's the question.
Yep.
We looked at hey, hi, hello, or just using a person's first name. And this is why I start emails with hey. I think like a lot of things, this is like the flash. This will be a flash in the pan also. When everyone says hey, it'll move on.
Yeah, and then you got to zig.
Like
yeah.
Yeah, zig when everyone's zagging. Bullets and dashes, interestingly, don't work. If you got to use one, use a dash.
Yeah, okay, good. I'm actually glad you got some data because when we do trainings, I say I don't like bullets. I don't like dashes. In the sense it doesn't feel like an email. It feels like a marketing email. But I actually had some data to show that that's correct.
Yeah, I mean, definitely
that it actually does reduce response rates.
I think these are univariate in the sense that like this does not also take into account length. So it probably is the fact that bulleted emails are also longer emails, but still.
It doesn't as a first email. It's different if you are trying to share information further along, but in a first email, it just doesn't feel like. How often do you write an email to a friend with bullets?
Yeah,
You don't.
I don't.
So
it is, and I think you hit the nail on the head. Is like write emails as you would to a friend or a colleague.
Yes.
And write first emails as you would to a friend or a colleague. Plain text, right? So underline, bold, italics, avoid all that stuff. Just write in plain text. Hyperlinks. Someone actually asked this in the questions. Like, are people clicking on links? You can have one, 0, 1 link. That's fine.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised. I thought there'd be more of a drop off. Well, also you can have multiple signature, but I think one thing you got to be careful of too is even how you label them, because if you people, I know I don't like to click on kind of like links that I'm like suspicious of them to some extent.
Yeah, security risk.
I know
for sure.
too, even like the people are tracking it. So if it's labeled, yeah.
I mean, I don't click on anything that I don't know that I'm not familiar with. If
I just don't
anything,
like people tracking me.
I've given up on that. I just assume I'm being that Google, and I'm not an Apple person, but Google has all my information.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the sign off, we saw a couple of emails with Best. So I've been using Best, and this is similar to the Hey thing. Is like if everyone uses Best, it may not work. Yeah. But I think there is something to this, which is it's kind of informal.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, look, just as a reminder to people, these are kind of minor differences. Ultimately, you should stick with something that is true to your voice, unless you have. I mean, if you don't care, like a lot of people, who cares what you sign off on, right? But if you have something that is kind of your thing or your voice, because whenever you express yourself in a way that is your style through any medium, phone or email, that will help as well, because it feels like a person. So that kind of like will trump a lot of the data when you do look at averages. So just want to put that out there.
Yeah. So we got tons more, but that's it. So really just wrap up here, and I'll stick some info. Let me go down one more here. I'll stick some info up here. So that's how you find me. And if you want to get deeper into the personalization side, the stuff that Beck has been doing, we got a link there that I assume you'll share these, Aaron.
Yeah, I'll ask them. And in fact, maybe can you copy the link and paste it into chat?
Yeah. Let me do that.
You can't type that thing in. See if that works. Okay, so yeah, thanks, Jeremy. Great stuff. One thing we talked about, I don't think you've done yet, but it'd be great to see someday, is how response rates vary by customer segment, enterprise versus smaller, East Coast versus West, internet, because that is something that, again, affects a lot of this, depending on who you sell to, who you target, executive versus junior, IT versus sales, so on. That'd be really interesting.
Some of those we've done. The one that, I have to kind of remember all of them. The geo one is we have to do still, especially like US versus Europe versus Asia and so on.
Yeah,
the one I do remember is the executive one that we did. So as you would expect, execs reply at lower rates than junior people. But this interesting thing happens, right, is although it's actually not surprising that thinking about throughput, you get less replies from the execs, but the op gen rate is higher. You get more replies from the non-execs, but the op gen rate is lower. It actually kind of washes out. So there's I think sort of obvious, I think there's a marginal advantage to prospecting execs. So like better off getting a little bit lower op gen from more senior people.
Someone just brought in dinner for me on like delivery service.
Nice.
It's 7:00 here, and so. But yeah, I think that the thing is we like about execs, we actually do recommend top down for a lot of reasons to start, just because they know. But having said that, account based prospecting, where you kind of have to be prepared to go top down and bottoms up and left to right, and whatever you need to do to get the information to map out the situation. And especially the bigger the companies you target, the more often you need to get a few different puzzle pieces from different sources, and then until you get the opportunity. It's a little bit of everything. It's a little bit more like
I got a cool tip, which is someone prospected me the other day, and they said, I forget what they sell. It wasn't something that I don't have anything to do with. And they said, who, that grammatically incorrect, but I'm a fuss budget about that. Who should I be talking to? And that was I think there was either.
I still can't get that one.
Whom? Well, it's to whom. That's how you remember. Whom, to whom.
That doesn't register. I'm not going to.
All right. That's okay.
Okay. So sorry. The tip was, I think I got,
sorry.
So yeah, who?
The tip was, who should I be talking? So they said, who should I be talking to? And what I actually responded to them, I said, look, I don't even know what you guys do, but I can give you this tip, which is research who the right person is, whom, whatever the right person is. And then say that instead, which is like, let's say the right person is Jane. Should I be talking to Jane? Like, that's the killer email. So they send that to me. Should I be talking to Jane? And then I respond and CC Jane, or forward it to Jane. And people have done that to me really successfully, where they went to my boss or something and said, should I be talking to Jeremy? And then my boss sends it to me. And it's like, if I don't think for a minute, I'm probably going to engage because I think my boss thinks it's important. So that's a pretty killer approach.
Yeah, all kinds of tips and tricks. So I think ultimately, don't let all the tactics and techniques distract you from the biggest waste of time in outbound, which is targeting the wrong types of companies and people in the first place. So, but Jeremy, I think we got a few minutes for questions before we wrap up.
There's a couple on there. One was latest stats and performance when you combine social, phone, and email. The short answer is, I think if you were to only do email, your reply rate is like 0.1 or 0.2 of what it is if you do a multi-touch strategy. Ditto with only phone, ditto with only social. You must be multi-channel.
Yeah, I don't know if there's stats on multiple, but we know that, when you combine multiple channels, it helps. I can't say by how much, but that's the standard.
Yeah, and it's hard to attribute which one tipped the scale, but you got to do it. And then the other one was email signatures. Yeah, that one actually I desperately want to look into. There's a whole bunch of interesting questions there, like should you put your photo in there? I would avoid a lot of links in the signatures. No one's going to click on them, and yes, it probably tips off spam filters. But I am really curious about putting your photo in the signature.
Actually, so have you looked at? I don't know how many of your customers use like video or GIFs?
Yes, we have.
I hear so many mixed bag stories on whether those work or not.
Yeah. So at least on images, and it's like on static images, it's very similar to the findings with links. Is like 0 or 1 images is actually fine. So that does work. Video is super subtle, which is video works, but it should not be the first email. It should be the second email. And the video needs to come after some kind of introductory text, couple sentences that provide context. Otherwise, like video, like the thing you see a lot of, like the video on the first email where they're holding the whiteboard, that shouldn't be the first email. It doesn't work.
All right.
Someone
got another. Yeah.
Yeah, I see that one. How many prospects should an SDR be working per day or week? I'm already like channeling your voice in my head. You want to take that one first?
No.
All right. So I mean, it is like it's you if you're targeting enterprise, right? You're probably targeting a lot fewer. If you're targeting SMB, you're probably targeting a lot more.
So the answer is it depends, but
yeah, but the SaaS like SaaS software rule of thumb, I would say you should probably be adding about 50, 60 new contacts per week. And then if you got things going on for 2 weeks, you got those 50 or 60 that you loaded in, but then you're also finishing off 50 or 60 from the prior week. So you're probably working about 100 a week.
Adds up.
Go ahead.
I know even back, if you're in kind of like new market building mode, you could be adding like 1,000 contacts a month for a few months. Touching a couple hundred companies a month. I think so. One of the mistakes too is if you're targeting bigger, companies and you have a few people, so it's not even the number of people you're touching; it's also the number of companies you're touching. Because really, if you're doing account based, if you're selling to businesses, there's too much of a focus on how many people am I talking to, and not enough on how many companies am I talking to. What's the status of the companies that I'm working on?
Yeah, great point. And if you can, like. We know our entire universe and assign out our entire universe.
That's the ideal way to do it.
Yep. So we got go ahead.
I struggle to find any great account-based outbound tools. I haven't looked hard. I haven't done an update on like Engagio or Terminus. Really, is more marketing. I don't know if I think that's a topic for another day.
Yeah, I can't self-promote, so we'll leave it as a topic for another day.
Yeah.
A question about GIFs. So I haven't looked at GIFs yet. I don't know. I had a marketing professor once who said like never use yourself as a sample. So yeah, I'd have to test, and that is testable because we know what it's a dot GIF, so we can check that out.
So this, feels like there's a lot of non-standard stuff. Like, so if you call email, LinkedIn, and phone the big three, and then kind of everything else, I think too is also dependent on the people doing it. Because like video, for example, like some people are really good with video and some people just aren't. So there's a lot more, I think, person by person, like social media messaging on LinkedIn is one thing, but when people are engaging, I think there's a lot more variability on kind of person by person, their interest, their ability to do whatever that specialty technique is. So the data it's harder, I think, to get to in a reliable way. The averages mean less. It's more about the individual.
Yeah, I think that is fair. There are people who, I don't know if they had theater training or what it is.
Yeah,
like they have sort of that screen
charisma. Used to it. Yeah,
for sure. I like to,
and honestly, most people don't.
Yeah, I mean, I have a face for radio, so I definitely should not be doing video. And then I guess one more here is if you if you reach out on LinkedIn first, should you reference that in the email? I don't know the answer. I mean, I guess my hypothesis would be it's sort of, I mean, in a way, it's like the classic throwaway, right? Is, hey, if you leave a voicemail, you say, hey, I just sent you an email, or vice versa. I do think with voicemails, I mean, it's a little bit of an abstraction to this question, but I do think the point of a voicemail is not to actually ask them to call you back. I think the point of a voicemail is to draw attention to an email. So this one's a little bit subtle, which is like, if you reached out on LinkedIn first, should you reference that in your first email? Yeah, I guess you could. I mean, if it doesn't burn, too many of those precious 50 words, you could kind of say like, just sent you a message via LinkedIn, but thought I'd, try to get in touch with you here too. But you really want to get to that personalization as fast as possible. If I had to choose between referencing LinkedIn or getting to some personalization, I would start with personalization.
Yep. Actually, last question. So I know the recording will be shared with people. Are the slides going to be available separately? I don't know.
Yeah, if you can message me on LinkedIn and I'll send you it if that's one way to do it, for sure. I'm happy to do that. And Aaron, I'll send it to you. If people ask you, feel free to share it with them too.
Yeah, we can my team can, however they publish it, I'll ask them to. So I will say last bit, Jeremy, are you going to SaaStr next week?
No, well, we had our Rev conference and 2,000 attendees that we just canceled 2 days ago because of the coronavirus fears. So I hear SaaStr is still going, but no, I'm not going to be out there.
Okay, well, I'll be at SaaStr. If anyone else is there, I'm doing a workshop on March 12th in San Jose called Outbound Sales Mistakes Even Smart Leaders Make. So if anyone's there. So January, again, we'll take this recording, slides, links, and so on, share it with the people who registered. You guys get this. And Jeremy, really appreciate this. It's fun having you. Always a pleasure. Love the data. Would love to do a follow-up someday with kind of this data by target.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
That would be. And that'd be a good one. Kind of like target / also breakdown by deal size. Like some version there. And just want to say thanks everyone for coming today. Again, here's his links. He's on LinkedIn. He put the link in the chat. I put it one more time for that guide to email personalization. And thanks very much, Jeremy.
Awesome. Be well.